Good morning. Today I want to talk to you about bluing. Bluing is a process used on steel that uses a black oxide coating of the steel, which makes the steel more resistant to rust. Bluing does not make your gun or any steel rust proof, but it does make it more rust resistant. There's a lot of ways that people do bluing. There's the hot bluing, which is the standard. That's the one when you buy a gun, if it's hot blued, and that involves using certain chemicals and getting the temperature up to about 300 degrees and boiling it, and that will cause the reaction that you need. There's rust bluing. Rust bluing is where you put a chemical on the metal to make it rust, not pitted rust, but a little rust, and then you boil it. And when you boil it, the rust turns black, and you take it out and you scrape it off, and then you keep doing it until you get the color that you want. I don't have the capability to boil anything like that in distilled water, so what I do is I do cold bluing. Cold bluing has come a long way, even since I've been doing bluing. It's not the standard. It's not certainly as resilient as the other two types of bluing, and but it's good. It's good for most instances. If you're going to be out using a gun every day, out shooting, doing whatever every day, then you probably want to think about getting it hot blued or getting it rust blued. But for me, I shoot them once in a while, and they look good. The rust resistance is good. You got to keep them oiled. It's the oil that keeps the rust off the gun, not necessarily the bluing. So what I've done already is I'm working on my Winchester 94. I have a post 64 made in 1970, and the barrel needed to be redone. I redid the barrel a long time ago, and I was looking at it, and I said, I could touch it up, or I could redo the whole thing, and I have time right now to do that, so I've redone it. This is the magazine here, and you can see where it's the bluing's worked really well on it. The way I do my bluing is different than the directions that you find on the bottles and so forth, but it works for me, and it's something that I've done with trial and error, and like I said, and it works for me, and it looks good. So here's my 94 post 64. This is that funkadelic coating on the receiver that they did for a while, and I don't know. It's not even steel under there. So I once made the mistake of taking the coating off, and I couldn't reblue it, and because it's steel. It's not steel. You have to have something that'll rust, because that's what it is. It's black rust that you put on things. So what I've done so far is I knocked out the rear sight so I could have a nice smooth area to work on the barrel. I took and I cleaned it good with alcohol. Then I started using some 220 wet dry sandpaper, and I used my 3-in-1 oil. You got to use oil, otherwise it'll just get all scratched up. I used it, and I went from top to bottom. I just all the way up and all the way down. I did that 3 or 4 times. Then I took it, wiped it down, and I used. I lost it. Oh, here it is. It's a for the Navy guys. They know about the green weenies. Well, but this is a scrubby pad, and it's made specifically for metal. And you can buy them at Ace Hardware, and they're pink. And I did the same thing with the oil and the going around. You have to go around. You don't want to go lengthwise on the barrel. It'll show up really bad when you decide to blue it. It'll show up as scratches. So you want to make sure that you do it from side to side. Then I took it and I really cleaned it good with alcohol. I took the rag, soaked it, and wiped it down real good, because if there's any oil or grease on this, it's not going to blue, because oil and grease stops rust. And what you're trying to do is do a controlled rust on your gun. So the first thing that I do is I take, it's like an ad or something here, Vans. This is stuff that you can get on at Amazon. And I put some in a. These are great things. I eat a lot of yogurt, and I save the plastic containers. And man, these things work great for this sort of stuff. You know, they just for soaking and for things like that. But that's just a little helpful hint. Then what I do is I take a rag, or in this instance, I'm taking a blue um, um, paper towel, you know, one of shop towels, and I dip it inside the Vans, and I start rubbing it on the. I can't get my phone out of the way. And I start rubbing it on the barrel. Just don't worry about making a mess. You're going to make a mess. So it's starting to change color. And you want to try to get it on as evenly as possible. If it's really uneven, then what we can do is we'll take a little piece of steel wool and rub it gently over it, and it'll smooth things out. So I got this on. And now the one thing about bluing, at least cold bluing anyway, is that different metals will give you a different color. So like the steel from your barrel will probably look different than the steel for your magazine for the 94. But the goal is to get them both as black as possible, and you won't really notice the difference. So I don't know if you can see, probably not, but it's starting to get darker. I'm going to do a little series on the 94. I have in my presence right now. Of course, he may come pick it up today, but have a newer 94, and we'll do a series on the comparison of the different models of the 94 as it progressed over time. The Winchester 94 was my favorite. It was my favorite gun that I had, and like I said yesterday, until I met up with the Enfields. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, after it's changed some color, is I'm going to rub it down real good. Just rub it down, get it all there. I don't know if you probably can't see that there's a change in the color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this at least 2 more times, and I'm going to wait in between coats, you know, and put some on and let it sit for a while before I change it out. So I'm going to take a break from the film here while I do that, and then I'll be back when that's done. Okay, it's been 2 coats in about 15 minutes. You got to do is, I don't think I meant it came across, but when you wet this, you got to really wet it good. If you don't, it'll come out streaky and maybe spotty. So you really have to soak it really good. So there we go. It's a lot grayer now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this off with some Oxbow, which is something you can get it on Amazon too, I think, but Get it from Brownell. It's a Brownell product. I have the cream, and I'm almost out. And the cream is the one that works the best. But um, we'll see what happens. I guess they stopped making it or something because I haven't been able to get it for a long time. So here's what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, I have an old ratty old piece of steel wool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dip it inside this Brownells, and I'm going to wipe it all over the barrel. Put it on fairly thick again. Now, uh, Birchwood Casey makes a bunch of bluing products. I use some of their bluing products. The reason I use these two is because they go well together. And by going well together, I mean sometimes if you use like what's it, super blue or whatever that they have, uh, and you put it on top of something, then you end up with like this blue black looking like you used a magic marker on a type black magic marker type thing, and that really that ruins your bluing process. So I'm putting this on now, and this I'm going to let sit for at least 5 or 10 minutes. So I'll be back. Okay, well it hasn't exactly been 10 minutes, but the stuff is drying, which is fine. If this stuff dries, it buffs right off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that now. And it's already turning a nice shade of black. Buff this off. One thing I didn't mention about the Vans is that if you're working on a gun and you're rebluing it, and the barrel or whatever you're doing, or you have some small parts that you'd like to get blued, what you do is you put some in a little container like I have with the yogurt container, and you just let them sit in there. Now, one thing I didn't mention either is that you'll come to places like there's a little place you probably can't see, but there's a little place here that isn't bluing like it should. And what happens is there's a little bit of grease there. So I have my alcohol rag that has been soaked in alcohol, and I rub it off. And so when I blue again, it'll blue. Now, what I do next is I take a simple cotton ball and I dip it in the oxo. Then you rub it on liberally. And this I'm going to leave on until it dries again, and I'll be back. One thing you can do while you're waiting for this stuff to blue is do the wood. If I'm doing a quick refinish on the gun, what I do is that this is my opportunity to work on the wood. This wood's in pretty good shape. It's, of course, I've already just redone it, but the what I do is I take some alcohol, put on a rag. If it's in bad shape, I'll take and put some alcohol on really fine steel wool, the 4.0 steel wool, and just rub it down until it gets clean. And then I take, depending on if it's a civilian gun and it's my gun, I'll put some tongue oil, some real tongue oil on it, or I'll use some of the Minwax tongue oil finish. And then I put that on, let it sit, wipe it off, and they come out looking pretty good. Then when you're done with that and everything's dry the next day or later on the day, depending on what you're using, then I take and I put a coat of Johnson wax on it. Johnson wax, it's oil, and you put the Johnson wax on, and that offers some extra waterproofing, and it will buff it up a little bit for you too. So that's just a little hint. All right, so now let's see where we are with this. All right. I know you can't see it, but because of the lighting, but it's black. And what I'll do then is I'll just let it sit for a few minutes, and already it's getting even blacker than it was. And when it gets to a good black point, you can see right there where it's black, is I'll use some, I like the Ballistol, and I'll spray some Ballistol on it and wipe it down, and it should be pretty good. That's the bluing part, and like I said, the small parts you can put them in this here, just leave them for a couple of minutes, and they'll turn jet black, and you don't have to worry about them. So, but anyway, there's my little lesson on bluing. There are several ways of bluing. The hot bluing and the rust bluing are certainly the more permanent of them. With the cold bluing, with me, the cold bluing, if I notice that it starts showing its age, I guess, what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of Vans, just a little bit on a rag, and just wipe it down with the Vans, let it dry, wipe it off, and it comes back again. So, all right, well, I think we're done. All right, well, thank you.